Hi everyone, in today's video I'll go over the Shadow Range Rogue build that I had a blast with during the Diablo 4 beta, and we'll also cover how I can see this build taking shape into the later parts of Diablo 4. So why play a Range Rogue build? Range Rogues in Diablo 4 follow the same archetype of build such as the Boazon in Diablo 2, and naturally borrow the same sort of traits and playstyle principles, such as being fairly squishy but having higher damage output, requiring good positioning, and having the right tools to help keep the character safe. Unlike in Diablo 2 however, the rogue in Diablo 4 doesn't have summons that can reliably hold back enemies, so instead we'll need to rely on a mix of having more resilience and added crowd control measures to protect the rogue. As for why the Shadow Rogue, the Shadow Imbuement skill adds shadow damage to our build, which enemies infected with this shadow damage cause a large shadow explosion when they die, making Shadow Imbuements a clear winner in wiping out large numbers of enemies with waves of shadow explosions rippling through densely populated enemy packs in spectacular fashion. And on top of that, the shadow explosion sounds so freaking awesome. I mean, just hear it for yourself. Anyway, just a small disclaimer before getting into things, because we all love disclaimers. But today's build guide is prepared based on knowledge gained during the beta weekends and is subject to changes to the class's skills and itemization before the full game launch. The beta also only allowed us to play to level 25 and only within Act 1, so any suggestions made covering areas or stages beyond this point should only be treated as food for thought for now. This guide is also prepared without much farming of legendaries and aspects after reaching level 25, and so this guide doesn't assume that you'll have multiple legendary aspects, since that won't represent the real gameplay experience once the game actually comes out. So with that out of the way, getting into the build, the first skill that we'll get is Forceful Arrow. Forceful Arrow shoots a straight arrow free of cost, with every third arrow fired also applying a vulnerable debuff on enemies which lasts for 2 seconds. Enemies made vulnerable receive 20% more damage from all subsequent attacks that land on that enemy for the 2-second period. Place your first 2 skill points into Forceful Arrow to unlock your first core skill. For our core skills, we'll use Penetrating Shot. Penetrating Shot is a powerful straight line shot that does high damage and hits multiple enemies in a straight line. Penetrating Shot is really effective for taking out groups of enemies in one hit, depending on how many enemies are in a straight line that Penetrating Shot travels through. Alternatively, Rapid Fire is another skill you can consider for that superior single target damage, but for early stages of your character, Penetrating Shot will serve you better as waves of enemy packs in dungeons and the overworld are much more common in your encounters. Place your next few skill points into Penetrating Shot to increase its damage, making sure we pick up Enhanced Penetrating Shot once it becomes available, and Improved Penetrating Shot after your second skill point in Penetrating Shot. Next for agility skills, pick up the Dash skill. Dash makes your character dash forward very fast and hits all enemies along the dash path, making Dash a useful tool for general mobility, additional damage in the early stages, and a method of getting out of danger or repositioning for later stages. Just 1 point into Dash is fine, with more skill points into Penetrating Shot after that again to further boost your damage, and then 1 more point into Dash to reduce Dash's cooldown and boost its damage a bit. This should then unlock the next set of skills. Onto the Subterfuge skills, pick up Dark Shroud. Dark Shroud when cast adds 5 shadows around the rogue that helps absorb damage. Dark Shroud in the beginning stages is just a filler skill to unlock the next set of skills, but we can take advantage of subverting Dark Shroud early on here for that 15% movement speed bonus. Once you get subverting Dark Shroud, get a point into the Exploit passive. Exploit boosts your damage by 6% versus healthy or injured enemies. This is a good pickup to boost your general damage output. Everything up to here, with a couple of exceptions, is pretty stock standard for a ranged rogue build before we jump into the imbuement skills. Just before we get into the imbuements, if you're level 15, you should be able to complete the part of the quest line to earn the combo point specialization for your rogue. Combo points accumulate on the rogue when using basic skills such as Forceful Arrow, and then get expended when using core skills such as Penetrating Shot. Using basic skills gain 1 combo point charge per hit and can build up to 3 combo points in total, which when expended by Penetrating Shot improves its damage and lucky hit chance modestly to significantly, depending on whether 1, 2 or 3 combo points were built up before using Penetrating Shot. For the imbuement skills, you guessed it, we are picking up the Shadow Imbuement skill. Shadow Imbuement when cast imbues our next 2 imbuable skills, such as Penetrating Shot and Dash in our case, with shadow damage. As explained earlier, this shadow damage infects enemies with shadow, and when they are killed, they explode with shadow damage, damaging other nearby enemies and potentially causing a chain reaction of explosions that ripple through large packs of enemies. I promise you, you're going to love this skill. Place your first skill point into Shadow Imbuement, then get Enhanced Shadow Imbuement and Blended Shadow Imbuement for your upgrades for the skill points after. Enhanced Shadow Imbuement grants 25% more crit chance on injured enemies infected by Shadow, and Blended Shadow Imbuement makes your Shadow Explosions apply a vulnerable debuff on enemies hit by it. I don't recommend pumping up your Shadow Imbuement skill straight away, as you should be doing enough damage with Shadow Imbuement at level 1 for a little while, hence why I recommend getting the enhancements first. For the next skill points, get Shadow Crash, which then unlocks Consuming Shadows. Consuming Shadows helps regain energy every time you kill an enemy with shadow damage. The first skill level or rank gives you a chance to reclaim 10 energy for every enemy killed with shadow damage. This should be enough for now to consistently use Shadow Imbuement with Penetrating Shot. Now at this stage, you may have also unlocked the Inner Sight specialization. I recommend sticking with using combo points for now however, as I found Inner Sight to be rather clunky and not tag the right enemies at the right times. It might come in handy against dungeon bosses or world bosses later on, once you've also augmented your rogue with sufficient amounts of attack speed or core skill damage bonuses to capitalize on the benefits of Inner Sight. After that, get a couple more skill points into Shadow Imbuement to unlock the ultimate skills. Once you reach the ultimate skills, pick up Death Trap. Death Trap lays a large trap that when activated will do a large amount of shadow damage to all enemies within it. This gives your rogue a way to apply some quick concentrated damage in an area, together with Consuming Shadows helps you recover energy as well, which you can then use to apply more Shadow Imbuement and Penetrating Shot. You can choose to pick up Prime Death Trap if you wanted to add a little crowd controlling element to Death Trap, but that's up to you, and it's not really that necessary. After that, I will pick up Adrenaline Rush, which then unlocks Haste. Haste grants a rogue 5% movement speed when her energy is above 50%, or 5% attack speed if her energy is below 50%. This is a good pickup to have increased movement speed or attack speed based on when those bonuses are needed the most, and in my opinion is worth maxing out. From here, we're moving beyond what we could reach in a beta, so anything mentioned from here on, do treat as food for thought, but anyway. For the next skill point, I would start developing our Rapid Fire skill mentioned earlier. Again, Rapid Fire is the skill of choice for single target damage, which shoots a quick volley of 5 arrows in the same direction. For Rapid Fire as well, this also benefits from combo points by increasing the number of arrows shot up to 8 and increasing the damage on each arrow. Anyway, at the same time we're starting to put points into Rapid Fire, I suggest doing a small respec and moving the following 3 skill points of Death Trap, 1 point of Dash and 1 point of Forceful Arrow into Rapid Fire, Enhanced Rapid Fire, which grants each successive Rapid Fire arrow with an extra 5% crit chance, up to 25%, and then Shadow Clone. We respec into Rapid Fire here to make sure we have the right tools to use going forward for taking down elites, dungeon bosses, and world bosses more quickly. And then Shadow Clone, which summons a clone that mimics our skill usage, so if you cast Rapid Fire, then it will cast Rapid Fire. Shadow Clone does 60% of the damage that you do, and is active for 15 seconds for every 60 seconds of cooldown before you cast the next one. Shadow Clone is a great way to supplement your damage in a short time window for when you need it the most. And finally, for the final skill cluster, what I like to call the ultimate passives, I would choose Precision to really round off your overall critical strike damage element. Beyond this point, I would continue to boost up your Shadow Clone, Shadow Crash for crowd control, Consuming Shadows and Innovation for energy sustain, Second Wind and Alchemist Fortune to boost up your lucky hit chance once you come across some cool legendary aspects such as aspects of Arrow Storms, and then slowly max out your primary skills and all of your damage based passives. For this build's weaknesses, the Penetrating Shot and Shadow Imbuement skill combination is not the best choice for large single target enemies such as dungeon bosses or world bosses. This is why I suggested going for Rapid Fire to help fill that weakness. If you wanted to round this off further, some skill points into Poison Imbuement can be used for dungeon bosses and world bosses. However, aside from that potentially not being in keeping with a full Shadow Range Rogue build, it does require respecing more points away from your other passives or utility skills, and Shadow Imbuement is not all bad anyway, with Enhanced Shadow Imbuement increasing your crit chance by 25% against injured enemies and will synergize well with your Precision passive. I won't go into legendary aspects too much in this video, as we don't have a 100% confirmed list of those aspects yet, or know if or how we can deterministically farm for those. But just know that there will be some good ones to use to really start cranking out your damage output. There's aspects that increase your attack speed, and ones that increase your damage based on conditions such as standing still or based on a percentage of your energy that you have remaining. Or if you're in need of more crowd control, look out for the Mangler's aspect, which has a lucky hit chance of dazing a target every time you hit them while they are vulnerable. And lastly on legendary aspects, there's an aspect that makes your Penetrating Shot split off to the sides called Trick Shot aspect. This is a cool aspect to improve your AoE capabilities with Penetrating Shot. For skills at higher levels, using dash and evade to avoid attacks or repositioning yourself will become more important, as well as relying on Shadow Crash to apply stun on your enemies periodically. If that's not enough, you may also need to pick up caltrops, concealment, or smoke grenades at some point, but that remains to be seen until we get deeper into Diablo 4 once the game comes out. As for your primary weapon choice out of bows or crossbows, for the Shadow Rogue, crossbows will deliver slightly higher imbuement damage, which translates to higher Shadow Explosion damage that smacks your enemies harder. On the other hand, if your build has a lot of lucky hit-based bonuses through legendaries, then maybe using a bow will be better for your build. And then there's a Weapon Mastery passive as well, which gives you extra vulnerable damage with bows or extra crit damage with crossbows. Ultimately though, while on some level, whether you use a bow or crossbow is going to come down to what you can get your hands on. More knowledge needs to be built around what weapon type is better for different types of builds once a full game comes out, as this will help drive decisions around whether it's better to grab bow or crossbow cash rewards from the world events, as well as target gambling for bows or crossbows. So anyway, I hope that gives you an idea of how to build out a Shadow Range Rogue once Diablo 4 hits the shelves. If you have any questions or comments at all about this build, please shout out in the comments below. In a poll that I posted a while ago, the Shadow Imbuement Rogue is by far the popular choice out of the 3 imbuement types, and she definitely is a fun character to play and I highly recommend it. I will however cover the Cold Range Rogue and a Poison one as well in some upcoming videos. So do hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in looking out for those and more Diablo 2 and 4 content. Until then, stay safe everyone, I hope Diablo 4 withdrawal isn't hitting you too hard, and I'll see you guys in the next video.